Well, Scott, Baldur's Gate 3 studio Larian is working on 2 new projects based on its own IP. Chris Scullion over at VGC. Straight up, man, I'm already excited. Baldur's Gate 3 that wasn't able to get to. It's funny, we yo, shout out. We played this back on Stadia. Like, that's
holy. Yeah,
right?
You have to really dredge those memories out of the back of my mind. Rest
yeah.
in peace, Stadia.
It was something else. But yeah, that's where we ended up playing it way back when. And then all of a sudden it comes out to everything else, to PC and then forth. And it just took the world by storm. It's been an incredible journey to watch Larian just hit on a whole other level from the original sin, Divinity Original Sin, into Baldur's Gate 3. But let's get into it. Last month, Larian boss Sven Vink said the studio was moving on from his Dungeons & Dragons universe to try his hand at something else. Now, in an update on the game's Steam page, it's shed more light on what this entails. Quote, being given the chance to develop a game set in the Dungeons & Dragons universe has been a dream come true for all of us, end quote, the studio says. Quote, but as Sven recently confirmed, we won't be introducing any major new narrative content to the story of Baldur's Gate 3 or its original characters and companions, nor will we be making expansions or Baldur's Gate 4. As an independent studio since 1996, we value the freedom to follow our creativity wherever it leads. In this case, after 6 years in the Forgotten Realms and much discussion and rumination, we've decided to seize this opportunity to develop our own IPs. We're currently working on 2 new projects, and we couldn't be more excited about what the future has in store. It's still in early days. We'll tell you more about those later down the line. But now that even as our focus turns to these new games, the sensibilities that brought you Baldur's Gate 3 are alive and well here at the Larian Castle. We've fueled by, dude, I got goosebumps, man. It's just like, this is so cool. Absolutely awesome. We're fueled by the very same fire in our bellies, one that drives us to create immersive experiences shaped by your choices. And we can't wait for you to join us on this next adventure. End quote. The statement also includes a message from Fink, who says he thinks the studio's future projects will be their best to date. I can only imagine, man, what they're working on next, Scott. Quote, I don't know if we're going to pull it off, but looking at our narrative, visuals, gameplay plans, I think what we're working on now will be our best work ever. End quote, he explains. Quote, I get excited like a kid watching the key imagery, want to show it to everyone now, and grumble in frustration at having to wait until it's actually all working. Yes, it's hype, but it's hype because it really looks and feels good. End quote. Scott, what are they doing?
Well, I have a fear now. Actually, the hype train crashes sometimes in the case of Cyberpunk, and funny enough, D&D and Cyberpunk as a tabletop game are kind of seen as comparative, which would be really funny if Larian would then work on a Cyberpunk game, but they're not, and that's probably for the best of everybody. But to see them work on their own thing after so long, that has to be so freeing. That has to be so positive as a studio. They didn't break free of Embracer or anything like that, but they've had ridiculous success with Baldur's Gate 3. They've probably got the wealth of a small nation, and now they're able to just pick their own course. That's awesome. I really wonder what kind of a game we're going to get. It must be a CRPG. I would not expect anything different.
Do you think, like, okay, it's obviously not going to be set in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, but the D&D side of things, like, they had people to answer to, right? Like, they took that IP, so they're now working with another company. I can't remember off the top of the head, but what the studio was called, the company was called. Either way, it doesn't really matter. The biggest thing,
I'm thinking of Wizards of the Coast, but that's Magic the Gathering.
I think you're similar. I think you might be right though, Scott. So to then not have to worry about answering to anybody and just go, yo, we made the biggest game of last year and just crushed all the game awards, won one game award after another. They don't have to worry about that now. They're going, hey, we can use an investment, or maybe they don't even need an investment from anybody. They just have that bank to go and just focus on what they want to create next. Keep it in it's mostly in the storytelling, right? Is what really set Baldur's Gate 3 apart from any other game last year. is the way the story unfolds, the way you interact with characters, and the way you start your journey and then get like hours down the line to then have that repercussion hit later on. That
the idea that everything has consequences and the game has to kind of bend over to make it work for you and to write around you as a unruly character is really cool. That's something that has attracted me to D&D, but I've never actually played myself. I just hearing about people's weird builds and weird things that they make work. And I think it requires some imagination. And I just imagine the imagination that has to happen to create a game like that.
It's gotta take so much time, right? Like 6 years seems like forever as a fan waiting for a game. But that you talk to a developer, 6 years is not long enough, right? I bet you they could use another 2 or 3 years to kind of get into the next where they want to really take it and hone it and polish and all that kind of good stuff. Scott, do they stick with the same top-down isometric view? Do they switch up the view? Do they go from away? Do they go to sci-fi? Like, any idea, any guesses where you think they might go next?
Yeah, I bet that it's because there's 2 IPs that they're mentioning both simultaneously. I bet one will be the experiment, whereas the other will remain much more their bread and butter. I think we'll see that isometric game because that's what they're known for and that's what everybody loves from them. And I think it'd be disappointing to present something otherwise. But if you have something like that and another game to point to and say, hey, look, we're playing with some new ideas in this one, they might have just garnered enough respect and enough attention to be able to do that.
Oh, I think they can now at this point create whatever they want, right? And you'll just show up. At the end of the day, it's a Larian game. Oh yeah, I'm in. I want to know what the story is all about. I want to experience these characters. I'm hoping it goes third person, right? The isometric is okay, and I play a lot of those games that way. But at the same time, I'm much more of a third person perspective player, and I'm hoping they can bring us down and hone us in because I want to see all the details. I want to get into the nitty gritty, right? And see the world from a much closer aspect, I guess I could say. But
it makes the world look bigger.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it absolutely does, right? So, I don't know. It's going to be a while yet before we hear anything. But let us know over at itgtv.com. What do you expect from Larian Studios next?